I trusted her with my life. For 15 years I thought she was my best friend, my sister, my rock. But while I was building my dreams, she was systematically tearing them down. Brick by brick. Dream by dream. And the worst part. She was doing it all while looking me straight in the eye and telling me she loved me. My name is Sarah, I'm 32 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. What I'm about to tell you is the most painful, shocking, and ultimately empowering story of my life. It's about how someone I trusted more than my own family spent years sabotaging everything I worked for. Not because she hated me, but because she was so afraid of losing me that she was willing to destroy me instead. By the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we should fear the most. And you'll see how I turned the tables and made her own lies become her downfall. Before we dive in, if stories of betrayal, revenge, and justice served cold are your thing, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. And I'd love to know where my story is reaching. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. It always amazes me how connected we all are through these shared experiences of betrayal and growth. But first, let me take you back to where it all began. I've always been what people call a dreamer. Growing up in a small town outside Portland, I was the girl with big plans, big goals, and an even bigger mouth about them. I wanted to start my own marketing agency, travel the world, maybe write a book someday. I was ambitious, maybe too ambitious for my own good. That's where Emma comes into this story. Emma and I met in college 17 years ago. She was my roommate freshman year, and honestly, we couldn't have been more different. Where I was loud and outgoing, she was quiet and thoughtful. Where I made grand plans, she preferred stability and routine. But somehow we just clicked. We balanced each other out, or so I thought. After college, we both moved to Portland. I started working at a small marketing firm while building my own client base on the side, dreaming of the day I could launch my own agency. Emma got a steady job at an insurance company. We got apartments in the same building, spent every weekend together, and I genuinely believed I had found my person. Not romantically, but that friend you know will be in your life forever. For years, everything seemed perfect. Emma was my biggest cheerleader, always encouraging my dreams, always there when things got tough. When I finally quit my day job 3 years ago to launch Creative Solutions, my own marketing agency, she was the first person to congratulate me. But let me ask you something. Have you ever had a friend who seemed incredibly supportive, but somehow you always felt drained after spending time with him? Someone who always had the perfect advice that somehow made you second-guess yourself. Drop a comment and let me know, because what I'm about to tell you might explain some things about your own relationships. Looking back now, I can see the cracks that I missed. The tiny moments that should have been red flags. The first real sign something was wrong came about 6 months after I launched my agency. I had landed this amazing client, a local restaurant chain that wanted to rebrand completely. It was exactly the kind of project that could put my little agency on the map. I was over the moon. I remember calling Emma immediately after the meeting, practically screaming with excitement into the phone. She congratulated me, of course, but there was something in her voice. A flatness I couldn't quite place. When I asked if she was okay, she said she was just tired from work. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the restaurant's owner. He was backing out of the contract. Said he'd heard some concerning things about my company's reliability, and had decided to go with a more established agency instead. I was devastated. This was supposed to be my big break, and it just vanished. But here's the thing. Only 3 people knew about that contract. Me, the restaurant owner, and Emma. I brushed it off as bad luck. Maybe the owner had cold feet about working with a new agency. Maybe someone else had made him a better offer. I didn't want to believe what a small voice in the back of my head was suggesting. The second incident happened 4 months later. I had been dating this guy, Marcus, for about 3 months. Things were going really well. Well enough that I was starting to think this could be something serious. Marcus was a freelance photographer, creative like me, and he seemed to really understand my ambitions. One Friday night, Marcus and I were supposed to have dinner. He canceled last minute, saying something had come up. Fair enough, these things happen. But then Emma called, asking if I wanted to grab drinks since I was free. She knew about my dinner plans with Marcus. She knew he had cancelled. And she knew exactly when to call. Later that night while we were at the bar, she started asking all these questions about Marcus. Was I sure he was as reliable as I thought? Had I noticed how he sometimes seemed distracted when we were together? Was I maybe moving too fast with someone I barely knew? By the end of the night, she had me questioning everything about my relationship. 2 weeks later I broke up with Marcus, convinced that Emma was right, that I was just setting myself up for heartbreak. It was only months later that I found out Marcus had been trying to call me that whole time. He'd been in the hospital after a car accident the night he cancelled our dinner. His phone had been destroyed in the crash, and when he finally got a new one and tried to reach me, my number had been blocked. I never blocked Marcus's number. But Emma knew my phone password. And here's what I want to know from you. Has anyone ever convinced you to end a relationship or avoid an opportunity for your own good? Someone who always seemed to have inside information about why something wasn't right for you. Tell me in the comments because this pattern is more common than you think. The incidents kept happening. Small things at first, then bigger ones. Potential clients who suddenly changed their minds after having concerns raised about my work. Friends who stopped calling because they'd heard I was going through a difficult time, and didn't want to add to my stress. Opportunities that evaporated just when they seemed most promising. For a while I thought I was cursed. Or maybe I was just bad at this whole entrepreneur thing. Maybe everyone had been right to tell me to stick with a stable job instead of chasing dreams. My agency was struggling. Not just struggling, it was dying. By the end of year 2, I had lost 60% of my clients and was seriously considering shutting down. I was behind on rent, stressed out of my mind, and starting to wonder if I was losing my grip on reality. Through it all, Emma was there. Supportive, caring, always ready with a shoulder to cry on or wine to share while I vented about my latest disaster. She'd hold me while I cried and tell me that maybe this was just the universe's way of telling me to try something different. Something more stable. You're so talented, Sarah, she'd say. But maybe the universe is trying to tell you something. Maybe there's another path for you. Something that won't cause you all this stress and heartbreak. She even offered to help me get a job at her insurance company. Just until you figure out what you really want to do, she said. You could have stability, benefits, a regular paycheck. Wouldn't that be nice for a change? But something inside me refused to give up. Call it stubbornness, call it intuition, but I kept fighting. I took on smaller projects, worked with local nonprofits for reduced rates, anything to keep the dream alive. And slowly, very slowly, I started to notice patterns. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I was working late at my office. Well, the spare bedroom in my apartment that I'd converted into an office, when I got a call from a potential client named David. He ran a small tech startup and needed help with their launch campaign. We had a great conversation. He loved my ideas, my energy, my portfolio. He said he'd been referred to me by someone who spoke very highly of my work. We scheduled a follow-up meeting for Friday. That night, I mentioned the potential client to Emma over dinner. I was excited but trying to keep my expectations in check given my recent track record. Emma listened, smiled, and told me she had a good feeling about this one. Friday came, and David didn't show up to our meeting. When I called him, his assistant said he'd had second thoughts about working with an unreliable agency and had decided to go with someone else. The same word that had come up with the restaurant client over a year earlier. But this time I was ready for it. This time I started asking questions. I called the person who had supposedly referred David to me. Another client I'd worked with successfully. She was confused. She had never spoken to anyone named David. In fact, she'd never referred my services to anyone because she didn't realize I was taking on new clients. That's when I realized someone was actively working to sabotage my business. Someone who knew about my potential clients before I'd even landed them. Someone who had access to information that only a few people should have. I started keeping a journal of every opportunity that fell through, every client who suddenly had concerns, every friend who gradually distanced themselves. I tracked timelines, looked for patterns, tried to figure out who had access to what information when. And the pattern that emerged was terrifying. Every single incident, every lost client, every failed relationship, every opportunity that evaporated, happened after I had shared the news with Emma. If you're still watching this story unfold, you're probably as shocked as I was. If you want to see how this ends and how I got my revenge, make sure you're subscribed because the best part is coming up. And let me know in the comments. Have you ever realized someone close to you wasn't who you thought they were? What was your moment of realization? I couldn't bring myself to believe it at first. Emma was my best friend. We'd been through everything together. The idea that she was systematically destroying my life was so absurd, so painful, that I tried to come up with any other explanation. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe the stress of running a struggling business was making me see conspiracies where there were none. But the evidence kept mounting. I started paying closer attention to our conversations, to the questions she asked, to the timing of her calls and visits. I noticed how she always seemed to know about my setbacks before I told her. How she always had the perfect solution that involved me giving up on my dreams. How her comfort always came with suggestions to lower my expectations. The final proof came in June. I had been secretly working on landing a huge client, a regional non-profit that wanted to revamp their entire digital presence. It was the kind of contract that could save my agency and set me up for real success. I had been careful not to tell anyone about it, not even Emma, until I knew for sure it was going to happen. But I needed a reference from a previous client, and I knew Emma was friends with someone who worked at one of the organizations I'd helped the year before. So I asked her if she could put in a good word for me with her friend. I told Emma about the potential non-profit client, explained how important it was, and asked if she could help me get that reference. She was enthusiastic, supportive, and promised to reach out to her friend right away. 3 days later, the non-profit called to cancel our meeting. They'd heard from a reliable source that I was having serious personal and professional difficulties, and they didn't feel comfortable moving forward with someone who might not be able to deliver on their commitments. When I called the organization that was supposed to give me the reference, they told me they'd never heard from Emma. In fact, they'd never heard from anyone asking about me at all. That's when I knew for certain. Emma wasn't just failing to help me. She was actively working to destroy everything I was building. I can't describe to you the feeling of that realization. It wasn't just anger, though there was plenty of that. It wasn't just betrayal, though the betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. It was the complete shattering of my understanding of reality. For 15 years, I had trusted this person more than anyone else in the world. She knew my dreams, my fears, my insecurities, my hopes. She had comforted me through breakups, celebrated my successes, held my hand through panic attacks. She was my emergency contact, my +1 to family events, the person I called when I needed someone to pick me up from the airport. And she had been using all of that intimate knowledge to systematically destroy my life. But here's what made it even worse. I realized it wasn't coming from a place of hatred. If Emma had hated me, if she had wanted to hurt me out of malice, it would have been easier to understand. But as I thought back over the years, over all the small moments and conversations, I began to understand what was really happening. Emma wasn't trying to destroy me because she hated me. She was doing it because she was terrified of losing me. Every time I succeeded, every time I grew, every time I moved closer to my goals, she saw it as me moving away from her. In her mind, my success meant our friendship would end. If I became successful, if I found love, if I built the life I dreamed of, I wouldn't need her anymore. So she made sure I never got the chance. She kept me small, kept me struggling, kept me dependent on her comfort and support. As long as I was failing, as long as I was heartbroken, as long as I was confused and frustrated and questioning myself, I would always need her. I would always come back to her apartment for wine and sympathy. I would always value her stability and her presence in my chaotic life. She was sabotaging me to save our friendship, not realizing that she was destroying the very person she claimed to care about. Before I tell you what I did next, I need to pause and ask you something that might be uncomfortable. Think about the people in your life right now. Is there anyone who always seems to be there when things go wrong, but somehow things keep going wrong when they're around. Someone whose support always comes with suggestions to lower your expectations. Let me know in the comments. Recognition is the first step to freedom. Once I understood what was happening and why, I had a choice to make. I could confront Emma directly, blow up our friendship, and try to move on with my life. I could simply cut her off without explanation and disappear from her world entirely. Or I could give her exactly what she had been giving me for years. Chose the third option. If Emma was so afraid of losing me that she was willing to destroy my life to keep me close, then I was going to show her what real loss looked like. I was going to let her destroy herself with her own lies and manipulations. But I had to be smart about it. I had to be patient. And I had to be better at this game than she was. First, I started feeding her false information. I told her about fake potential clients, made-up romantic interests, imaginary opportunities. I watched as each one was mysteriously sabotaged in exactly the way I expected. But this time I was ready for it. This time I was documenting everything. I set up a separate phone line that Emma didn't know about. I created email accounts she couldn't access. I started building real opportunities through channels she couldn't monitor or interfere with. While she was busy sabotaging my fake prospects, I was quietly building my real ones. The breakthrough came when I landed a contract with a Portland tech company that wanted to expand into 3 new markets. It was worth more than all my previous contracts combined. The best part: Emma had no idea it existed because I'd found them through a networking event she didn't know about. But I didn't tell her about the real contract. Instead, I told her about a fake one. A small local business that supposedly wanted help with their social media. I made it sound like just another small job that might help me pay rent. Sure enough, 2 days later, the client called to cancel. Except there was no client to cancel because I'd made the whole thing up. Meanwhile, my real contract was moving forward beautifully. For the first time in 3 years, money was flowing into my business account. Real money. Life-changing money. And Emma had no idea. The final phase of my plan required perfect timing and a level of acting I wasn't sure I could pull off. But I had been learning from a master manipulator for years, even if I hadn't realized it at the time. I told Emma that I was finally ready to give up on my agency. All the failed contracts, all the stress, all the financial pressure. It had finally broken me. I asked her if that job offer at the insurance company was still available. Emma was thrilled. She hugged me, told me how proud she was that I was finally choosing happiness over stress. She said she'd always known I'd be happier with a stable, predictable life. She promised to talk to her boss first thing Monday morning. That weekend, she threw me a farewell to entrepreneurship party. She invited all our mutual friends, made a speech about how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit when a dream isn't working out, and toasted to my new beginning. I smiled and accepted their congratulations and well wishes. I even teared up a little when Emma talked about how excited she was to work alongside her best friend. Monday morning came and Emma called me with great news. Her boss wanted to meet with me later that week. The job was practically mine. Emma had given me such a glowing recommendation that they were ready to make an offer after just one interview. Tuesday afternoon, I posted on social media. The post included photos from the tech company's office, screenshots of the contract I'd signed, and a heartfelt message about how sometimes your biggest dreams come true when you least expect them. I thanked everyone who had supported me through the difficult years and announced that my agency had just landed its biggest client ever. I tagged Emma in the post. She called me within minutes. She was confused, hurt, angry. How could I not have told her about this opportunity? Why had I lied about giving up on my dreams? Why had I made her look foolish in front of her boss by asking for a job I didn't actually want? I let her vent for a few minutes, and then I said the words I'd been practicing for months. Emma, I know what you've been doing. I've known for almost a year. I have documentation, recordings, proof of every single time you sabotaged my business. But here's the thing. I'm not going to expose you. I'm not going to ruin your life the way you tried to ruin mine. I'm just going to disappear from yours. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. I understand why you did it, I continued. You were so afraid of losing me that you were willing to destroy me to keep me small and close. But you lost me anyway, Emma. The moment you chose your fear over my dreams, you lost me. I hung up the phone and blocked her number. That was 8 months ago. My agency is thriving now, better than I ever dared to hope. I've expanded into 2 new cities and hired my first full-time employee. I'm dating a wonderful man I met through professional networking. Someone Emma never knew existed, so she couldn't sabotage it. I've heard through mutual friends that Emma quit her job at the insurance company and moved back to our hometown. Apparently, the stress of losing her best friend and the guilt of having her years of manipulation exposed became too much to handle. I don't feel good about that. I never wanted to hurt her the way she hurt me. But sometimes people have to face the consequences of their choices. The hardest lesson I learned from all this is that sometimes the people who love us the most are also the people who fear our success the most. Sometimes, the ones who claim to want what's best for us are actually working to keep us exactly where we are because change terrifies them. But the most important lesson: your dreams are worth protecting, even from the people you love. Especially from the people you love. If someone in your life always seems to have concerns right when things start going well for you, pay attention. If someone always has reasons why you should play it safe, aim lower, or settle for less, ask yourself why. And if someone knows about your opportunities before they disappear, start asking harder questions. You deserve friends who celebrate your success, not sabotage it. You deserve people who want to see you grow, even if it means growing away from them. Trust me, I learned that the hard way. If this story opened your eyes to something in your own life, or if you've been through something similar, I want to hear from you in the comments. Your story could help someone else recognize the signs before it's too late. And if this video helped you in any way, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more real stories about overcoming betrayal and building the life you deserve. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have confronted Emma directly, or would you have chosen the path I took? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Remember, your dreams are worth protecting. Even from the people you love. Especially from the people you love. Thanks for listening to my story, and I'll see you in the next one.